Strategic partnerships, such a relevant subject. Really excited to talk about it with our viewers today. It's certainly in the era of the word pivot, certainly a trigger word for me. I prefer the word diversification, but to do that, oftentimes, especially when we're all tightening down on spending, it's really important that we can diversify with partnerships, more so than investing in our own resources. So Dahlia, I'm excited to have you here as we introduce this topic that's so relevant. And just give us a quick intro of yourself and kind of your involvement with the industry and how you feel about partnerships.
My name is Dahlia Gazzar. I'm with Dahlia Plus Agency, and we are a strategic marketing agency that love to push people and brands out of their comfort zone. I'm going to push you out of your comfort zone and tell you never to use the P word again. Because especially and it doesn't have to do with the times that we're in, but I am one to say instead of the P word, we talk about always being creative in collaborations, in co-creation, and I think that's super important when it comes to partnerships, especially strategically. And you're going to see this a lot, even with once upon a time competitors. They're coming together right now to come up with very creative ways of how to handle partnerships, or to collaborate on different experiences that can sort of enhance the offering, right? So when you talk about partnerships, you take a look at first and foremost who those partnerships are going to serve. Our needs, like forget the isolation period we're going through right now. So like, Maslow needs are out the door, but they're still relative, but or relevant. But when it comes to partnerships, I think the most important thing is to really go down to basics in regards to knowing who you're serving and how you want to serve them, and then be super creative and agile in regards to partnerships that you're putting together, and always think long term, not just your short term deliverables.
Absolutely. One of the biggest things that I kind of want to examine here is really that step by step of how to examine that. And just to go 10,000 feet, Dahlia, before we kind of really dig into the nuts and bolts of partnerships, about the good and the bad, and to prepare yourself for both scenarios, is I just want to talk about what the heck we're talking about. And then I want to dig into your opinion about tracking, if we're aligned. I know you and I talked a bit earlier, and I think we're very aligned, but three biggest partnerships that partnering with competitors, working with competitors can do for you is increase volume first and foremost. So when you increase volume, it allows you to actually take more projects on than you're able to usually do. Even if dates are overlapped, or if you have two large programs in 1 month where you need to kind of divide and conquer the workload, that's what it can do, is increase volume. Secondly, take larger scale projects. So you're able to actually get more coverage of physically large events, conferences, or activations, or also programmatically, from challenging projects that involve more technology or more talent than you're used to, or something that's maybe just a larger volume project than you can typically handle, or the scope is larger. Like if you've got a client that wants you to handle registration, you having two event planners or producers to handle the front of house and the back of house, or one person handles hospitality and the hotel, the other person handles programming and staging, that's really important that you bring on a competitor to kind of divide and conquer again. And then the final one is additional skill set or additional offerings, right? And that's working with high-tech celeb or influencer talent, curated food and beverage, where we do influencer dinners for 15. If that's not your wheelhouse, you might want to bring on a competitor, technically, but somebody that can actually specialize in that arena, that does trade shows, experiential activations, and working with those that really intimately know that vertical or that customer that you're kind of dabbling in, but don't necessarily know very well. That's where you can work with a competitor to do one of those or multiple of those three things. Dahlia, I'll turn it to you. Are there any of the benefits that you see of partnering with competitors or bringing on people to kind of expand your purview?
Well, so the other advantages of partnering with people that you usually don't partner with is your insight and your intel becomes even bigger, meaning that you would be able to steal genius ideas from other sectors, other events that were done or designed, and bring them to a client that you probably even didn't even think of. And so you want to tap into the potential of the creativity and the activations that you can bring to your current clients. And so that's one. Second is that, which is the biggest thing. If you are not really big on data analytics and to measure what the return on event is, or something that you brought on as an activation, that's when you super need to like partner with not only a tech company or data analytics partner, but also those that know how to crunch numbers. So I'm really big on celebrating or being a megaphone for what I call event technologists, because event technologists are now needed. So those are the people that are able to connect the dots between all the technology platforms, and that you're able to see the data and the insights that are coming from registration, even your housing, to know where Austin's staying and why, and also the attendee journey, for example, or exhibitor journey at an event, and then even post event, and putting all that data together so that you're able to design better assets or better experiences, even if it's not face to face. So like you have to look at it, and from a holistic standpoint, and you won't be able to do that unless you have someone who's dedicated to that. We always talk about, oh, we're just going digital. No, we're not only going digital. We've been digital for a while, and we're always saying, oh, let's look at data analytics. Well, you should have looked at data analytics, and also look at the content that you are designing. Your content is the new currency, and if you're not able to produce content that will be efficient enough or attractive enough for all your event participants, that's when you also need to partner with someone who can create content that is able to be tracked, analyzed, and saying we need to serve more of that. So there's all these opportunities that sort of can live under partnership, but it's more so of what are the assets, content included, what's the data behind it, and also revenue opportunities that you can bring to clients.
Absolutely. I mean, the endless possibilities of revenue increase in this situation are really kind of limitless if you really think about it, because all you're doing is adding your kind of value added service base. And obviously the biggest question comes into play is, aren't you selling services that divert from your own? And I think that our response that we've aligned on, Dahlia, is no, you're not. All you're doing is expanding your purview of services, but protecting yourself and getting a plan in place before just, going to that dark place and finding partners on Google. You certainly want to be careful with that, and you don't want to rush into these type of things. So if you're not considering it yet, setting up a lateral commission agreement is really important, because we got to talk about monetization, and there might not be room for your event planner service base, but they want a tech partner. So you really want to make sure that you can monetize that partnership in a very fair manner for both parties. And also, don't forget about that third party that's the most judgmental and most important. That's the client. So you want to make sure that you're not being egregious, but by overcharging for those things, because you want to add 20% on to a fair market fee, right? So you want to work with that vendor, make sure that you're both being paid fairly, and maybe do a commission agreement. And that's definitely something you can structure out. And I think that that's what a lot of people have asked of this talk today, is really figuring out, how do I monetize this? Not only is it relevant, why should I do it, but also how do I make money off it? And really making sure that you have an understanding for that referral-based model. So we want to talk about a couple referral-based models that I think have worked in our business, and that is when you work with a vendor to co-sell. So you're selling your services with that vendor. So if I'm producing your virtual conference and your tech partner is actually doing the tech behind it, we're marketing ourselves together. So requesting some kind of a margin off of their service where the client pays you both separately is certainly an option. Then there's also the passive referral, where clients look to you as a bridge. They use your relationship with them as an endorsement of trust to bring on partners. And of course, that passive referral can just be, hey, Carol over at corporate client, here's so-and-so, you guys have a good time talking, blah, blah. And what we do for those partnerships is we actually tell our client or our partners, say, hey, for the first 5 jobs, we're entitled to a percentage of that business. And those things can be, in certain people, certain circles, and certain opportunities, viewed as taboo or not good. Other people think that that's standard business practice. So it's a very subjective perspective on if you should monetize referrals or if not. Dahlia, what is your feeling about monetizing those relationships for referrals? How do you feel about it?
I think it's a go. I think if you are in agreement. All the, T's are crossed, I's are dotted from the get-go. So it has to be super transparent. It has to be super transparent between your partners as well as what, the referral terms are. But it also needs to be transparent, not necessarily on the referral fee, but transparent to the client who you're bringing in and how that relationship works. So that also needs to be transparent from the get-go. So like for example, we produce virtual events as well. And when we do, we also have a partner that we work really well with. And so we bring them on and we are very transparent on who's going to do what. The client will always want to have like one point of contact. So you have to make that clear as well. I'm going to go out on the limb here. I think another business model between suppliers or partners, tech company, production, etc., is rev share, and that you should have skin in the game. So like for example, if you're coming in and you're marketing an event, or if you are producing an event, and if you come to the client and you say, okay, it's going to be tiered. You have a fee if the attendees or the numbers reach X amount. But if they reach XX amount, then there's a rev share. There's more into it, because I honestly think when you are working with a client, especially us in this industry, we actually give a lot, So this is where we say, oh, there's scope creep and this and that. That always comes up. But I honestly think that, one wave of the future, if it's not happening already, I do know that there were a couple of shows where we did marketing for them. And we said, our fee will depend on how many people register. And I think that's fair game going forward, especially because now with virtual events, planners are not able to budget. They don't know where to start. There's no benchmarks. There's no here are the numbers I'm looking for. We just finished 2-day show, a healthcare show. They had no idea what the attendance was going to be. They had no idea how much revenue they were going to have. Usually on site, they have 300 exhibitors, so they had no idea whether that money was going to come virtually in or not. And they doubled their attendance and doubled their revenue.
So one thing that we are totally aligned on is definitely transparency. I think that first and foremost, under any conditions, no matter what happens or who you're working with in any market vertical or what have you, transparency is the key. However, Dahlia's business model is going to work for a lot of people. And yet for my business, our core business of monetizing client relationships, that absolutely does not work. And the reason why is because in our experiential space, and I first of all, I believe that Dahlia's model is perfect, but this is a very prescriptive business.
You just have to say that right now.
No. The whole thing is very prescriptive in its approach, right? And so my issue is that we have brands that will pay us to activate their brand, and we just find consumers in the street who will engage for a matter of seconds or minutes, giving away swag or sampling or what have you, right? So the ability to monetize the consumer experience is challenging because you don't really have access to a consumer experience that's monetizable. And the brand, in our case, wants to pay us to do a job that elevates it, and it's basically standalone. We push it out to the public, and we measure KPIs, key performance indicators, differently than a conference or a trade show. So I want to talk about 2 additional business models of monetization that you should also consider. The first one is selling yourself as a turnkey solution, where you bring in a florist, an audiovisual company, a set designer, a set fabricator, rental companies, even the property itself. You market yourselves together, and you create a value-added proposition for the client so that they can say, these are vendors that synergize and work well together. And then, of course, they can pay each vendor independently, or they can just pay you and you can pay those vendors. Separately, and this is our business model, we act as an agent or an agency. In the agency business model, you don't always know what partners are on board or what in-house services are being procured. Where my company, under our banner and under our management and purview, we fall under the audio, lighting, video, staging, florist, event design. We're delivering the turnkey solution. But again, in the essence of transparency, what we do is create an agency fee on the bottom line. So when I have an itemized bill, the floral section might not have a Floral Partners company name, but it'll say the arrangement counts, the dollars per each, and those are not marked up numbers. because we take, and Dahlia, back to what you were saying, we take a 20% bottom line to manage the vendor, to pay the vendors, to deal with anything with budgeting concerns, overs, unders, changes. We manage that for the client.
The client is only dealing with you.
And the client is only dealing with a representative of your company or yourself if you are the company. So from a client's perspective, and it varies per client, per market, per vertical of what normal is, but again, prescriptive approach, because Dahlia's model for conferences and trade shows, I prefer that in hearing it. But, you know, because the 90% of our work is an agency model, we work that way. There's no wrong way to do it as long as you're transparent.
Well, I mean, from our side, we also work the same way you do, Austin. So, you know, it depends on the client, and it depends on the project at hand. But I'm looking forward to seeing what other types of business models are going to come out from, you know, future partnerships, collaborations. And honestly, you know, I know the quarantine is killing all of us, but this is truly the time where I would say, you know, I challenge everybody from a partner perspective or a provider perspective, even planners, to reach out to people that they've never reached out before and say, hey, how can we work together?
Absolutely. Partnership exploration right now is key because everyone has time to really give you the full rundown of what they can do and also who they work with, which says a lot about who they are as people, which is a really good segue, I think, for the dark underbelly of this whole thing, which is the exposure, right? And what partnerships can expose you to. So because we want to create really fair conversations to help you build your businesses, we want to talk about those. So the number one thing is going to be stolen clients and projects, where you have defected persons, partnerships, and employees. And really, I want to bring that up. See what I said? Defected persons, partnerships, and employees. It's really no different. If you want to grow your business, eventually you will not be enough to do that. So a partnership is just like hiring your first employee, where they could defect and take that client or customer with you. But there are measures that you can take to mitigate the risk and exposure that you have. The first and foremost one I want to talk about, which is pretty obvious, I think, to maybe everybody here, is NDAs, the non-disclosure agreement. This is kind of, in my opinion, a first and foremost document that is a guiding light to opening your mouth, okay? Don't say anything about who your client is or the opportunity until an NDA is in place, right? And don't forget that your protections that you're going to put out in the NDA have to be defensible, right? You got to make sure that whatever you're saying, if you do this, I'll do that it's defensible, right? And that really an NDA only covers the exposure of confidential information, which really has not a whole lot of ground. And so personally, I think NDAs are relatively weak. I think they're great for conversing on a high top line level only, but you have to dig deeper. And so I'm going to talk about, you know, how we dig deeper here. But Dahlia, what's your feelings about NDAs?
I mean, I sign NDAs when, for example, a tech solution comes and says, well, you know, I'm going to be sharing with you a project or a client information, and hoping you won't share with anybody else. I don't know. I guess I operate on the mindset of, I never share information with any other entity. So like if Austin's coming with me and sharing, you know, client info, I don't necessarily, and you tell me don't share it, it's not going to happen. So NDAs, I think they're a safety like net in a way, but I think more so than anything, there has to be a certain level of trust between, you know, the partners, and that more so than anything will sort of set the stage, no pun intended, of how you're going to work together or not in the future. Right. So I think that matter of trust is in my mind more important than just signing an NDA.
Absolutely correct. I mean, trust is always something that you're going to have to find, which unfortunately I think is really built up over time and working experience with a partner. Now, since you might be pivoting, sorry, I said it, but you might be pivoting into an era where you're working with partners that you don't necessarily know, or dabbling in space that you don't have the experience to really fully vet or understand or know that partner, we got to talk about that layer deeper than an NDA. So everybody start out with an NDA. There are so many that are available online that will probably cover the bulk of what you need to cover in an NDA. But again, in my opinion, and in our company's infrastructure here, an NDA is not enough, because there are two things, hot buzzwords that I want to talk about: non-compete and non-circumvention. Non-competes disallow a partner from coming in, getting proprietary information about a project, and then defecting and then competing with you for that business. It also restricts somebody, and every state, every country, every municipality, everything's different of defensibility for a non-compete. But really interestingly is non-circumvention. And that is this interesting contract that clients also sign, as well as partners, employees, and or marketing partners of yours in this particular example. And that disallows them to circumvent you in a business activity. So if I am the planner producer and I bring in a tech partner, a non-circumvention clause or non-circumvention agreement disallows your client, also disallows the vendor from circumventing you in that relationship with that party. So non-competes, non-circumvention, as well as a code of conduct and decorum agreement. We like a code of conduct and decorum agreement because it allows our partners that we might not know very well to operate at the same standard that we do. And that's something that's very subjective and very hard to defend in court, but it's something we like to put in writing, that you'll behave in a certain manner, you'll use specific tools, you won't text a client at certain hours of the night. Like bizarre stuff like that happens more often than you think. And then the final one, which is the most objective and hardest, is when you have partners and vendor partners that you want to engage, that you make them sign a quality and delivery and follow through agreement that allows you to subjectively approve the quality and delivery of what their project or product is in delivering to your client. And if you disapprove of that quality and follow through, you can hold them to that. So if you have a PowerPoint designer or content creator, an audiovisual partner that just fails on delivery, you might be subject to damages if you set that forth. Now, at our company, we have subjectively summated all these terms. Again, the NDA, the non-compete, the non-circumvention, the code of conduct, and the quality delivery follow-through acts as an MVA, a master vendor agreement. And that MVA wraps all that love and discomfort into one beautifully long, small point-sized document that is not great for people to have to review and sign, but it's protection for you. And I promise you, if you create partnerships that have an agreeable MVA terms, even if they redline it and edit stuff out, it's a really great framework for a really quality partnership, because you have a guiding principle, a Rosetta Stone that you will operate at, so that the caliber of work and the type of communication that you maintain with your client is protected and defensible.
I do think that you tend to have to really work on vetting out potential partners, and so the idea of taking a look at signals or signs. I work a lot on my intuition and my gut quite a bit, and so I use that quite a bit of time when I'm trying to read a partner or read their team. If they're trying to siphon ideas from you, or to like get close to clients that you introduce them to, because I'm always introducing everybody to everybody. So that's, I'm a net weaver extraordinaire, I should say. But the other part I think that you should also take a look at and vet out the most is take a look at projects that they're working on. So like take a look at and I'm not
Caliber of client, right?
exactly, but also like to take a look at, how they walk in a room if you're like within an industry event with them, or like how they talk to people, no matter if it's a client or not. Or does it matter if like, do they smile only to CXO people or not, to like the directors and managers of the world type of thing? Those are all telling signs. So I work like, I like to see how people manage relationships, especially if you're with them at an industry show, or even on social media, and just taking a look at their LinkedIn posts that they've done, or like how they comment or compliment each other, or is it I instead of us. And
Absolutely.
these are all telling points, and you should vet them out. It's like, it's a must, and I think it's gonna have to be even more so going forward, and be, and also ask them, so what else do you want to know about us, like how we operate, etc., as a team, so that they get to know you. Because I think the other part of it is you want to work with partners that have the right expertise, but it's also you want to work with partners that you want to hang out with, that you want to like have a relationship with, because then you know it's successful. You know that you're going to always jive. You know that when you give constructive criticism, it's not going to be seen as, oh, she's high and mighty and I'm not, type of thing. It has to be that way. It has, like, it there's so much that goes on, when you put on events or branding projects and all of that. You can't deal with egos and stuff that much. It can suck you dry. So
Obviously, a really good point is just make sure you have the right energy alignment. You walk in and you're really vibing with them. And another indicator right now, especially as you vet vendors remotely, is really just their energy in a Zoom meeting. You can see how they engage with other people. If they talk down to people, belittle people. I know that sounds negative, and that's we're not wrapping on a negative point, but certainly just see that interaction about how they treat their partners, partnerships, competitors, and if that ego comes out in an ugly way. And that's why I said earlier, the decorum piece is so subjective, but it's something that people don't often look for. They want to align the bullet points on the website, and they want to align the service bases, but they don't actually look to the people that they have to actually partner with and realize, I just don't like working with this guy. I mean, I know talented people in the industry, or a lot of artists, I'll be honest with you, that I just have no interest in working with. And the most easy one to draw everyone's brain to the social events are bands and caterers. I've met the most talented caterers and most talented bands that I will never, ever recommend to anybody. Even my worst enemy, I'd be like, no, it's not even worth it for you, because it's just that bad of an experience to work with the partner, even if they're damn good.
So, final thought is spend time, or like schedule time to do partnership research. And on that note, like, really get out of your comfort zone and reach for people that you have not thought of going after or wanting to create a relationship with, because you will be pleasantly surprised on what you can, about the connections that you can have, but also what the value add that you can bring to a certain client. So I always make it like, it's actually in my schedule. Every week I connect with 5 different people that I would have never wanted to connect with or thought of connecting with. And then I do follow up, conversations to say, okay, how can we work together? Doesn't have to be an immediate project. It's just so that you expand your tribe, you expand, potential relationships, but you have to schedule it on your calendar.
Absolutely. My kind of wrapping thought about this subject matter is really quite simple, and that is that don't forget that as you might lone wolf it, either you're starting your own thing, thinking about starting your own thing, or you have a small team now, or due to the current conditions may have downsized your team. Don't forget that strategic partnerships are a great way to do the beta version of how and where to grow your company. Just like a bad employee, a bad partner can do the same thing. So find good partners and good partnerships, and realize that if you're monetizing that partnership too often, that might be the direction to expand your firm. So if you find yourself doing larger and larger conferences and bringing on that other producer, think about hiring another producer. Maybe even hiring that producer and creating a strategic alliance and folding one company to create efficiencies and co-own a company. I mean, you can find a business partner after you've founded your company. You might have your company for, let's say, 3 years, done it by yourself, and you just jive with so-and-so events in a neighboring city, and you guys have done a few events together. This might be the beta version without enduring any more costs, without having to employ anybody. It's the beta version of how to grow your company. In fact, that's how I grew mine. We kept hiring print shops, and I kept sub-renting microphones, so we bought more inventory. We created a print department. That's how you offshoot your business. So really, what I'm saying is, and getting it as a wrapping point is, this is inevitable. So get used to it, get into it, because all you're doing if you don't get into this is you're limiting the amount of money and potential that your business has at this state of the game. So through partnerships, you can really establish the next few years, even months, whatever it needs to be, and at least close some deals that make sense and make you more money. So Dahlia, thanks for joining me today. It's been wonderful, and I look forward to the chat later that we're going to do live, and of course supporting you guys in your future endeavors. Dahlia, anything else to close the session?
No, perfect. Thank you.
All right, thanks so much.